Hi, I'm Dana, and it sort of feels like a lot of the content on my channel has been quite positive lately because I got to see Alanis Morissette and I was anxious but it went well, and I don't know, I feel like the content's been relatively positive. So obviously me being me, it's time to just completely drag the mood back down and completely depress everyone. And I wanted to talk about 5 negatives of being autistic because I did 5 positives. It feels like the next natural path is to discuss 5 negative things about it. I personally do think it's important to discuss like pros and cons. I don't think it's good to just talk about the positives. I don't think it's good to just talk about the negatives. So I'll link the positives up here so that we are talking about both if you haven't seen that already. Let's get into it. As always, this is just my point of view and my opinion from me as an autistic person. I am just one autistic person. We're all different, everyone will experience different things. But if you're another autistic person, hopefully you can relate a little bit, and I'd love to hear whatever you think of all this. So let's actually get into it now. The first negative part of being autistic for me, and the thing that I think a lot of people who are autistic experience from what I've seen online and between friends and the like, and that's we tend to experience a lot of isolation from other people, from events that we might want to go to, you know, from lots of different places in life. We experience being very isolated, and it's definitely something I experience a lot. You know, whether you're in school or in a workplace or just trying to like do stuff as a person in general, we all want to be accepted and feel like we belong somewhere. And when you're autistic, it's a little bit more difficult to find somewhere that it feels like you belong. It feels like most people don't tend to like me. I feel like, you know, the majority of groups I've been a part of through my life, whether that's like classes in school, like outside classes, like I did a lot of drama and musical theatre and stuff growing up. And I always managed to make like one friend, but for the most part, I felt very isolated from other groups. I both felt like I didn't know how to, and still feel like I don't know how to approach people. I don't know how to approach a group. I don't know how to approach a situation or a community or whatever else. I don't know how I'm supposed to invite myself to be a part of it. I don't get that. And then being autistic tends to mean that we don't necessarily have the best social skills. We don't necessarily react to things the way people want or say the things that people expect us to say. So I then felt that I was being like intentionally isolated, you know. I've had a lot of times in high school, especially where I would like sit down at a lunch table or whatever and everyone else would leave. And it's very isolating. You end up being isolated. And that leads me to my next thing, which is loneliness. And I think it's something that autistic people, you know, we experience often and quite heavily, and it's really shit. You know, I'm very much of the opinion that the reason people tend to think like, oh, well, we're all a little bit autistic is because we're not subhuman, we're not like some different species or whatever, you know? We do experience the same things that other humans do. That's why you can, like, if you're neurotypical, relate to us and think everyone's part of the spectrum. But the truth is that we experience those things in different ways. We're experiencing the same thing, but we're experiencing it in different ways. And for me, it is very much like when you often see the depressive neurotypical posts about like, you know, when you feel so lonely even though you're in a room full of people. Honey, try being in a world full of people and still feeling lonely. You know, and it's very different to being alone. I don't mind being alone most of the time, but then you get hit by loneliness. And I think that, again, it's one of those things that's sort of heightened for autistic people because, well, neurotypicals will have experienced at some point feeling lonely in a room full of people. Most of the times that I'm in a room full of people, I experience that because it's a complete disassociation from other people. I don't connect well with other people. You know, a lot of the time I don't think that people even realise I'd particularly like to connect with them because I don't know how to get that message across. I don't know how to make it clear, like, hi, I'd like to make a friend. So most rooms that I'm in, I don't feel like I've connected with anyone. I don't feel like I really know why I'm there. I don't feel like I fit in. But being autistic and having also like isolation tend to be a part of your life. You know, if I didn't live with my ex, I would absolutely just have weeks and weeks where I don't see anyone or speak to anyone, and I don't want to live with my ex forever. So it's just sort of the terrifying prospect of if I don't live with someone, I'm just going to be cripplingly lonely constantly because I'm already lonely quite often. You know, there's so few people I've been able to connect with and like form any sort of like genuine relationship with that I want to be a part of. You know, it's hard. It's very hard. you know, and I've had therapists tell me that, like, all of my problems will be solved if I just make some friends, and I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that they would, like, some of them, loneliness being one of them. But how do I make friends? How do I find the people I actually want to be friends with, you know? Like, I've done the whole Bumble thing. I've done the whole, like, finding local Facebook groups. And these people, like, reply to me being really kind. And I'm just like, yeah, we have nothing in common. We have no shared interests. And I don't see how I'm going to enjoy spending time with you. But thanks for the offer. You know, but it sounds like I'm just being fussy. It sounds like I'm just not bothering. I'm just like, oh, I'm lonely and I'm just always going to be lonely. And it's not. It's a case of, like, I can go out and meet these people. I'll go and talk to them and I'll sit in a coffee shop. I've done it before, believe me, when I'm like, I just need a fucking friend, so I'll just choose this person, go out for coffee with them. And now I'm just lonely and anxious and sad because I'm with someone and still lonely. So it sucks. Slightly different, but possibly honestly, the most annoying negative of being autistic for me is that I'm consistently made to feel like I'm stupid, when 9 times out of 10, they've misunderstood what I meant. They've misunderstood my point, they've misunderstood my meaning, they've misunderstood, like, the fact or whatever. And their misunderstanding makes it sound like I'm stupid. But if they'd actually paid attention to what I'd said, what I'd done, what I'd thought, blah, 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 I'm not. Like, I've got a perfectly valid, reasonable, solid point. But they're acting like I'm an idiot. You know, and alternatively, they don't give enough information. This has happened so much with, like, neurotypical bosses and interviews and all sorts of different situations where I've not been given, like, enough information, or I've been given vague information, and then they act like I'm an absolute idiot for doing the wrong thing. And it's like, but you didn't tell me that was the wrong thing. You didn't tell me the right thing to do. You've given me incredibly vague fucking information. And now I'm sat here feeling like I'm a complete fucking idiot and, like, there's no one stupider in the entire world than me. Like, you know, and that's just me being an autistic person in the world. What's even worse is when that's happened and I explain to someone, like, oh, I'm autistic and that's why it's happened, and then they use a fucking baby voice on you, or they start speaking slower, or they start talking louder, and it's like, honey, I'm not deaf. Like, you know, I'm glad you've grasped that there's a disability at play, but it's the wrong one. And I think it might be the one that annoys me the most because it frustrates me so much. And then I inevitably end up being like, I'm not an idiot. Hello, like, one of the ones that I got in, like, trouble with my mother for was I used to go to, like, swimming. It wasn't a swimming lesson, okay? I'm 25. But when I was, like, 22, 23, we were going to a local gym and we went swimming. And they had, like, little lifeguard people. And I'm not a strong swimmer. I'm very, I think I've said it before, but I'm very, you know, in Lord of the Rings when Sam's like, I'm coming, Mr. Frodo. And he's just, like, fucking splashing out into the lake. I'm very like that. Like, I'm going to get to your boat, but I might partially drown in the meantime. You know, like, I'd survive a shipwreck, but not for long. So I'd asked, like, this lifeguard that was there if I could get a few lessons, and she seemed a bit confused but gave them to me. And she then, bless her, she was trying her best, it wasn't her fault, but she kept, like, sort of dunking me under while I was trying to swim. And eventually I came up, I was like, no, I fucking hate my face being underwater, okay, like, please don't do that. And she was like, oh no, you need to learn to swim with your face in the water to do, like, such and such for, like, aerodynamics. I don't have a fucking clue. And it panicked me. I was very overwhelmed. I was like, it fucked me up. I don't like water a lot, alright? So I was like, look, I'm autistic and I'm, like, about to have a panic attack. I can't put my face in the water. I can't do it. And she was like, oh, you didn't tell me you were autistic. Are you alright? And I realised straight away, like, fuck's sake, she's gotta be doing this now. So I was like, yes, I'm okay. Are you alright? And my mum was within hearing distance, and she made a whole thing of it afterwards about, you can't speak to people like that. And I'm like, so how come it was alright for her to speak to me like that? She'd been talking to me normally up until that point when I couldn't do something. Like, it fucking sucks, and it makes me feel really stupid and really immature. And then when you eventually, like, have to fucking say something about it or snap back, you're the one that's the idiot and the one that's, like, the bad person, the one that's in the wrong, and it riles me. My fourth little negative, and we've talked about this a little bit on this channel before, and that's anxiety. You know, not every autistic person has anxiety, but obviously everyone experiences anxiety at some point. Everyone ends up anxious about something at some point. And I think especially for the autistic community, a lot of us do have anxiety. You know, it does come alongside it for a lot of us, because for me at least, so much anxiety is based on the what ifs, and what if this happens, and what if that happens, and this could happen. And so many times I've had those anxieties proven true. You know, as an autistic person, my brain sort of subconsciously picks up on patterns. And it's not something I realised that it did at all until recently, when I've been talking to other people and watching different things, and I've been like, oh, I'm picking up on this stuff like way before the people around me and way before the people have. And my brain is good at patterns, it's just not the ones I expected it to be good at. It means that I pick up on all these patterns and I'm like, well, that happened, and then this happened. So if this happens, then that'll happen, and then that'll happen. So I've had it all confirmed in my brain, you know? Like, my therapist asked me at one point when I was going to go to a party. Was it even a party? I was going to someone's house for like a gathering. I can't remember if it was a party or just a few people. But I was so anxious about it. I was in tears to my therapist at the time. And they were like, well, what are you so anxious about happening? And I was like, I'm really anxious that I'm going to walk in and everyone's going to laugh and be like, no, you're not meant to be here. We invited you as a joke. And my therapist was like, well, why would they do that? And I was like, well, why did the people in high school do it to me? Why did they do it? I walked into someone's fucking house party, like all dressed up, I'd done my makeup, I was buzzing, I told my parents, like, I've finally been invited to a party, and it was a joke, and they all laughed at me for being there, and it was fucking horrible, as you can imagine. So, if that happened, it can happen again, you know? Everyone told me that Alanis Morissette wasn't going to get rescheduled again, and then it got rescheduled on the day just like I was anxious about. So many of my anxieties are confirmed because of the way my brain works as an autistic person. It picks up on all these things, and I'm like, I can tell myself it's okay all I want, but I know last time it wasn't, and the time before that it wasn't, and the time before that it wasn't, because all those times the thing that I was anxious about happened. You know, as autistic people, most of us will have had bad social experiences. We will have been bullied, we've been harassed, we've had this happen and that happen. We know that this is our life, we know the things that happen to us, and we're anxious about them. And I do think that to some degree, if I wasn't autistic, I at least wouldn't be as anxious. You know, I definitely think that anxiety comes along with autism due to the society we live in. It's not hardwired as part of an autistic person. But the way that we're treated means that most of us experience it, in my opinion, I think. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. I'd love to hear what you think and what you experience. But finally, let's get into the last one, because this is another tie-in, and it ties in perfectly because it's trauma. I've seen so many tweets and Instagram posts and all sorts of other stuff saying that an untraumatized autistic adult essentially doesn't exist because of the way that we're all treated by our families, by friends, by people at school, by people as we move through life, by work colleagues, by just people in the street. Like I've mentioned before, when I was about 14, I had like a big stim of chewing the inside of my cheek, and a full grown ass man just in the street while I was out doing some shopping took the piss out of the way my face looked when I did that. You know, it's things like that where like, it was such a small thing. He probably doesn't even remember doing that, but I will remember that for the rest of my life and not go back to this little stim that made me feel better. And I don't feel comfortable necessarily calling that trauma, but I guess it kind of is. You know, I don't like the whole trauma Olympics that goes on where like, this person's trauma was this, so that's so much worse than this. I think that lots and lots of autistic people go through lots of little traumas. And, you know, we're all different. Some of us will have been through fuck-off big horrible ones. I'm not trying to remove anyone's experiences. But for me personally, I feel like it's been lots and lots of little traumas just throughout my entire life. And they all add up to make quite a scared, insecure, traumatised adult, which is horrible to say. Like, I need to do a whole episode of Learning to be Autistic on this one, but just sort of accepting that I am sort of like very traumatised by life. It's been a big, fresh, new revelation for me in the last couple of weeks, and it's scary and it's kind of horrible, and I'm terrified that people are gonna judge me of having like a victim complex or something, because like that's just the way life is. That's how I've always seen it. I've never thought like these things that have happened to me are traumas. I've always just thought like life's unfair and you get on with it. Like that's what happens and you deal with it. Not for other people though. Like for other people I'm like, that's horrible, I'm so sorry you had to experience this, like you don't deserve that. But for me I'm like, that's how life is, fucking deal with it, Dana, get through it, like let's just move on to the next thing. And I think I might have just reached a point where enough stuff's added up that if I don't address it, I think I'm gonna end up being an asshole. But I do think that like in the society that we live in the way that like the school system is, obviously I'm speaking from a very like Western English point of view, but like from the way that we grow up and the way that we live, I think that most autistic people have experienced, if not many small traumas, lots of big ones, or a mixture of both. You know, I think we all have trauma that we have to unpack and unlock in a way that's very different to neurotypical people, because so many things that happen to us just would not happen to a neurotypical person. So many of the things that do happen to us happen for different reasons, you know, and it's all very complex and nuanced and not something I have the qualifications or any sort of knowledge to talk about. It's very much just a thought and realizations of my own life and times. I wish I could go deeper in it because I think it is very interesting and very important, but I really don't have the knowledge for it. I'd need to do a lot of research for that video, so maybe in a few months, but not now. But I would like to hear your opinions and thoughts on any of these. I'd love to hear what you think the most negative parts of you being autistic are. If you want to cheer us up a bit, feel free to talk about how great it is to be autistic and how much you love yourself, because you deserve to. You're great, whoever you are watching this, I promise. And especially if you're someone like, you've lasted this long into the video, I'm going to assume you're someone who regularly either watches this far or comments, or both. If you don't normally comment, that's fine as well. I know I'm always like, oh, please comment. I very rarely comment on other people's videos as much as I might enjoy and cherish them. So I hope you enjoy it, even if you don't comment. But I also love the discussion that we're able to have. I was going to say something else, but I've forgotten what it was because we're at the end of the video and I'm still a little bit recovering from a cold. But yeah, I would like to hear what you think if you want to tell me. If you don't, that's fine too. You're always welcome to DM me on like Insta or Twitter or whatever. I know that sometimes it can be quite intimidating and scary to think that like your comment's just going to be there for everyone to see. So if you don't want that, feel free to DM me, I don't mind. Because I get a lot of ideas for videos from the discussions that I have in the comments. You know, a lot of you say really, really interesting, fascinating things that I hadn't thought of at all, and make really great points that I then later steal for the videos. It's great. And no one will ever know because it's just a comment on one of my videos. But no, that's part of why I'm always happy to take requests as well. Because I never know what I'm going to talk about next, to be honest with you. I just sort of like read comments and read tweets and then go, oh, I want to talk about that, that's interesting. And then boom, here's a video. Which is why they've all been about fucking Alanis Morissette. So I'm gonna go before this one ends up being about her too. It'd be so ironic. But yeah, whoever you are and wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year. And I'll see you again in a few days.